Well, good morning, everybody. It's me, Mitch. This is Morning Coffee with Mitch, and drink it if you got it. Now, let's get into the topic that I want to talk about today. And I alluded to this last night on the live stream. The topic today is going overboard and worrying about little stuff when trying to live basically like a caveman in a modern technological world, with lunatics giving advice, corrupt people at every level of government and the medical establishment, drug companies. You know the problem. Disease levels are going through the roof. Obesity, childhood diabetes, going through the roof. Not to mention what we think is the main cause of all that, and that's the lack of proper nutrition from a radically high sugar diet. It's about the nitpicking minutia, unimportant in the overall scheme of things, trivia that so many of us, quote, carnivores, seem to focus on and create conflict and criticize me and comment to me about, well, you're not eating grass-fed meat, so it's not going to work for you. Well, did you know that an egg has 0.7 grams of carbs in it, so it's not going to work for you? Trivial stuff. Insignificant in this tsunami of poison and the damage that it's doing to us from all fronts. But we're talking about diet. So let's address that. And let's try to put this trivial nonsense worry back at the proportion it deserves to be of what we really need to worry about. There's many things that we know are hurting us, and the excess of these things is what's causing so many of our health problems. We know that because our attempts at keto, low carb, and carnivore have really helped. They've really helped. So sometimes maybe because of circumstances, because of the world, because of what we've damaged, the soil and everything, because of politics, because of the pollution of some of the food we're eating, the wrong foods being fed to our cows and chickens. Things might not be as rosy or as perfect as they were 50,000 years ago when it comes to the nutrition available in our food. But that's such a minor problem when you think about it compared to this fact. And I had a thought. I'd heard that Americans 100 years ago averaged 1 pound of sugar a year. And I'll use sugar and carbohydrates kind of interchangeably. They may not have been, but let's just talk about carbohydrates. 1 pound equals about 450 grams. So if the average person is eating 250 to 350 pounds a year of, they call it sugar, but I went and looked it up, and believe it or not, I printed out a little paper here of some of the search results that I got on some very simple questions. I said, how many grams in a pound? And it came back about 450 grams. I said, okay. So let's assume that the average American these days eats between 3/4 of a pound and a pound of this a year. That's between like 350 to 450 grams a day. So I searched for what is the average carbohydrate consumption in this country. And this is what I got back. The amount of carbohydrates, and this didn't say that they are consuming this, I got back all of the advice. The amount of carbohydrates a person should consume per day varies depending on a number of factors, including age, sex, health, and weight goals. However, the dietary guidelines for Americans recommend that 45 to 65% of a person's daily calories come from carbohydrates. For example, if a person consumes 2,000 calories per day, they should consume 225 to 325 grams of carbohydrates. Are you shitting me? They're telling us that the average person in a 2,000 calorie a day diet should consume between 225 and 325 grams of carbohydrates. How much bread, pasta, bagels, candy bars, orange juice, Coca-Cola do you have to consume just to meet what they consider the dietary goals? Now, I said, well, are we talking about sugar or all carbohydrates? And it said, carbohydrates are macronutrients that provide the body with energy in the form of calories. Wow. So we're not eating sugar. We're eating energy. We're eating calories. There's an awful lot of discussion going on about that. Is the craziest thing in the world. Calories have no mass. We are eating basically nothing because it weighs nothing. We are not eating calories. We are eating mass, grams, weight of things. We're eating atomic molecules that have mass. There's a lot of energy in atoms, as shown when you blow up a nuclear bomb. Are we eating that? Is that what we're eating? This is crazy to think that way. We already know that calories actually don't apply. I'm not going to go into that long discussion now, but calories, whoever decided to start trying to use calories to measure human energy was wrong from the start. We didn't know it back then. There are two main types of carbohydrates, it says here, complex and simple. Complex carbohydrates are less processed, more slowly digested, and higher in dietary fiber. Simple carbohydrates are more quickly digested and are often added to processed foods as refined sugars and sweeteners. Some say that focusing on the quality of carbohydrates is more important than the quantity. And then they go on. How much carbohydrate is needed per day? Current guidelines recommend that 45 to, we've heard that before, 225 to 300. That's how many carbs are needed. Needed for what? I haven't had a carb. Let's say, for the sake of argument, because we're talking about how nitpicky we should be, let's suppose that I get 5 grams of carbs a day, maybe 10 grams of carbs a day, because I eat 5 eggs, I eat meat, I eat all that stuff. So let's say I get 10 grams of carbs a day. Does that make me a ketovore? No. We cannot count the carbs that come with meat because we have to eat the meat. We can't avoid all carbs. It's impossible. The only way to avoid all carbohydrates is to eat nothing. The trace carbohydrates that come in meat come in the form of glycogen, and they come in eggs. It is absurd to think that we have any control over that. We stop nitpicking about trace carbohydrates. Whatever they are, you will eat. They won't hurt you. They won't cause cravings. They are part of the meat. You're eating those with the right balance of protein and fat anyway. You can't count them. When I say I haven't eaten a gram of carbohydrates in over 2 years, I'm talking about carbohydrates that I put in my mouth, chew up and swallow intentionally that are not protein or fat. Period. Stop correcting me. Stop thinking I don't know. We all know that these trace carbohydrates come in meat and fat. Okay? We can't be that nitpicky. The carbs, if we're even keto, if it's not triggering addictions, we could probably eat some of this stuff, but we still have to be wary of what toxins, poisons, lectins, anti-nutrients, and fiber and other disruptive things may be in plants we're eating. We're not supposed to eat plants other than as emergency, last-ditch effort food to stay alive. Plants were never meant to be glorified as the holy grail of human health. They are the enemy and they are the poison. What else are we obsessing about? We're obsessing about things we can't control because we live in a modern society. And unfortunately, we just can't do anything about it. We're supposed to avoid all plastics because microplastics are in everything. Well, okay. That's not something we as individuals control. That's something that people in the highest levels of agencies that control the manufacture of things maybe can control. But in the meantime, we're stuck with things the way they are. We can try to do the best we can. We can try to not drink water out of a plastic bottle that's been sitting in your car for a month. We can watch out for these toxins and things. We can use frying pans that claim to be PFAS and BPA free. We still don't know whether any of the claims are true. We can buy eggs that claim to be pasture raised or free range. We still don't know if it's true. The fraud in everything is enormous. All we can do is the best we can. Unfortunately, there are hundreds of millions of us in this country, and nowhere near enough people that supply the purest, like Berry says, pasture-raised, panda-massaged cows. What we have, the food we have available to us, is as good as we're going to find in mass quantities and we'll be able to afford. I can't afford $30 to $40 a pound for a ribeye that gets shipped to me in a box full of dry ice from somewhere in Texas, which when I get it is disappointing as hell. It doesn't look good. It's not a gorgeous. I would much rather go to Sam's Club or Costco and grab a package and look at it and see where this cut came from. Is this cut even edible? Is the fat well marbled? Yeah, I know this animal was finished on grain. That's the best we can do. So what's my choice, people? How are we going to feed everybody a healthier diet? If we're telling people you have to eat panda massaged, grass-fed stuff, you can't do that. We have to compromise a certain amount and do the best we can. And if we get 95% there and we eliminate the plants, which is something we can do, we're doing everything in our current situation, in our current society, with our current technology and our current corruption in business and medicine. We're doing everything we can to live our best life. Any minute of the day that we spend finding fault and complaining to each other, demeaning people who aren't a pure carnivore, who drink coffee, who puff on a cigar, who don't believe in the religious beliefs that we have. The minute we stop listening, the minute we decide that if I can't do it perfectly, I'm not going to do it at all, get me to that Dunkin' Donuts quick. If we can do nothing more than overcome our carb addiction, if we had to live on just hot dogs, we would be better off. We need to avoid the seed oils when we can, but we can't help it when they put that stuff in the foods and don't put it on the label. We need to be vigilant about reading the labels, but the labels themselves are fraudulent in so many cases, and so many things are made to make us think they're things they're not. What the hell does organic mean, really? Do a deep dive into what you must do legally to be able to use the word organic. It's a joke. These organic crops are getting sprayed with just as many bad chemicals as everything else. It's all a scam, folks. But we have two choices. We have to be as vigilant as we can without becoming obsessive. Don't get OCD over this stuff. Do the best you can. The most important things, I think, the most important things. And at the top of the list is eat no plants, consume no seed oils. Those, I think, are the two things that are really doing us the most damage. Those happen to be the two things that are at the top of the dietary recommendations of what's the most important thing to eat. And in that respect, we're diametrically opposed to everybody else on the planet who believes that. I'm telling you that the worst things you can put in your body, the things that do the most damage, the things that by eliminating, you can go the longest way towards fixing your health. I did. It worked for me, and it's worked for so many of us that it's no longer up for debate as far as I'm concerned. We understand the reasons why those things are recommended to us. Too much money involved. Too many politics involved. Next thing you can do, after you stop and try to eliminate all the seed oils and just completely refuse to eat anything that grows on a plant, unless you're starving to death somewhere and there's nothing else to eat, then the survival food is the best you can do. And if you have to eat the survival food, avoid the high oxalate plants and the high carbohydrate starches and tumors, which generally leaves just broccoli. And if you have to eat broccoli, don't eat too much of it. That's where we are today. But if you get past and you can eliminate the seed oils and you can eliminate the plants, then we'll take a look at the carbs. We were much healthier. We were much healthier 100 years ago. We were eating plenty of carbohydrates, and There's been a lot of studies that have shown that the seed oils are doing a lot more damage than the carbs, and that if you're eating the carbs that we used to eat when we had a meat and veg with every meal, those carbs weren't killing people. There weren't that many diabetics. So you get a few trace carbs in meat and eggs, it's not going to hurt you. Stop worrying about it. The average American is eating between 225 and 325 grams of carbohydrates a day. Some of them are still living to be 70 and 80 years old, although they're sick. Most of them become diabetics, but not all. So, if you happen to be getting 5 grams of carbohydrates a day accidentally, forget about it. Forget about it. It means nothing. Stop obsessing over it. If you think you need to spend half your day calculating your omega-6 to omega-3 fat ratio, you will fail. If you think you need to have 30 bottles of supplements and you need to keep track of the exact dosage and the timing and all that, you will fail. If you obsess over doing things to try to rebalance your microbiome, you will fail. Nobody can regulate the human anatomy consciously. There's too much going on and it's happening too fast. Do the best you can. It's so simple. It's so simple. Shop for what you can find are the best meats for what you can afford and buy them and eat them. Avoid all plants. Avoid all seed oils. Try to avoid plastics when you can. Try not to cook in plastic. And if you sous vide in a BPA-free or PFAS-free bag, you're okay. You're okay. We can drive ourselves crazy obsessing over minutia and trivia, which we can't do anything about. Yes, it would be better if that stuff weren't here and it didn't exist. But we have to make the best of the situation we have. And we have to not drive ourselves frigging crazy in the process. There is not on this piece of paper a single word, a single word, a single frigging word that does anything but perpetuate the problem, and that's what it's worth. The sooner we start thinking about those things and doing whatever we can to try to make those changes at some level that are going to actually do some good, the sooner the 0.1% or less of those of us who are fixing our own personal problems, are getting healthy, are not having to go to doctors, are not having to take drugs, the sooner more and more people can make small changes in their own personal situation, the faster the word will get out. I've gone on long enough this morning. If you took nothing more away from this, just remember the slogan, and you've all heard it. Don't sweat the small stuff. And while you're not sweating the small stuff, enjoy the day. Take the rest of the day off and eat meat.